Be'ez Hashem Yisbarach, to start tonight's shir, Yeshua Parak Aleph Pasuk Yud Beis. Just want to give a grace shekayach to all those that have listened until now and will listen to this shir and enjoy all the other shirim. Mitzvah Hashem to go through many other areas of Torah, Befrat, Sefer Yeshua, Chumashim, Yom Tovim, Gemara, Mishnayos, and more. So let's take a look at Pasuk Yud Beis. Let's see what the Navi tells us and see what's going on here. This Velaraubeni, velagdi, velachati, shevet hamnasha, Omar Yeshua lemar. Seems like a very benign pasuk. The pasuk says that and to Ruvain, shevet Ruvain, and to Lagodi, shevet God, lachati shevet hamnasha, and to have a shevet Menashe. Yeshua said the following. So a lot of diukim. First of all, it doesn't say shevet Ruvain. It just, or Shevet God, it says Chati Shevet HaMenashe. And second of all, why L'Ruveini, L'Godi, L'Chati Shevet HaMenashe, not HaMenashi. We do find in the Chumash that the Torah says Shevet HaMenashi. Omar Yeshua Leim, Yeshua says the following. So let's also, we're going to have to understand what's the whole sugya of Bnei Gad, Bnei Ruvain with the Tanai. That whole business, we'll get to that soon in Mitzvah Shem. So the Malbim, first and foremost, goes through many different inyone diktuk on the pasuk. But after that, he says, it's very interesting. The Malbim says that the psukim are out of order, and that these psukim were said before the whole Chazak ve'amat speech that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave him. And he says, that way before, not way before, but a while before, Yeshua thought about the Kvish HaSa'aretz, before HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave him this nevuah, Yeshua was already thinking about how he's going to be Kvish Eretz Yisrael. Ubiyosa Yarim and Amalchama, because he was afraid of the war, Omar L'Ruveini V'Lagodi Sheyabru Chalutzin L'Fnei Achayim. We're going to see in a little bit that the Shevet Gad, Befrat, and Shevet Ruvain, in second place, if you will, were the greatest warriors that Klal Yisrael had. And therefore, if there was anybody you wanted to rely on that's going to fight a good battle for you, you'll rely on that. And he also sent Meraglim. It's very interesting. And the Malbim goes into the whole fear that Yeshua had about it. We talked for the Svarim and the Shatim that the word is that he was being Beiteach B'Hashem and the whole business. But the Malbim's learning Kipshutay that he was afraid that there was going to be a war. Now, a war is never good. It's we're not here to be matzdik any wars, but there's such a thing as a Mulchemes Mitzvah. You have to do it. From here till Perek Gimel, everything from now till Perek Gimel, meaning from the Pasuk Yud Beis till the end of Perek Beis, all happened at the very beginning of Perek Aleph, really, and it's out of order. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu saw that he was getting nervous, Diber Elov, Sheyavar Sayarden, HaKadosh Baruch Hu spoke to him that he should cross over the Yarden, Shleyetzap, Al Meraglim Shasholach, he shouldn't wait, shouldn't anticipate the Meraglim that he sent, shouldn't rely on them. V'yis Chazik, V'yis Ametz, V'yiftach Al Guras B'nei Ruvain. He should be Mechazik and be Mesametz, and he shouldn't rely on the strength of B'nei Ruvain and B'nei Gad. And then right after the Dibur, he commanded the nation that they should prepare food, because in 3 days they're going to cross over the Yarden, which we spoke, Pasuk Yud Aleph. Although he didn't know that the Meraglim were going to come back within those days, the Meraglim came back pretty quickly. As we'll see in Perek Beis, there's a big shiloh, we mentioned before, from the Goin, already in Pasuk Yud Aleph. There's a shtickle confusion about the cheshbon of the 3 days, as we'll see at the beginning of Perek Beis, but this is going to help him yashav what's going on, because if the word is that he sent the Meraglim 3 days afterwards, but you don't send Meraglim to Eretz Yisrael when you're in Eretz Yisrael already. After Perek Gimel, that's when they actually crossed over the Yarden. So this had to happen before they crossed over the Yarden. So then that's what the Malbim says. And over here we clarify the confusion with the cheshbon of 3 days, like we're going to explain at the beginning of the next kapitel. He uses that actual word, kapitel. Not parak, we know we're going to get to that in a different shmuz mitzvah. It's very interesting. Why Taka didn't he rely? Why was HaKadosh Baruch Hu telling him not to rely on the Gvura of Ruvain and Gad? L'chayra there's a chelik of the Tanai B'nei Gad B'nei Ruvain that they're going to help Achechem b'Milchama, and we'll see as we speak now that Yeshua came from Shevi Yosef, was Miskaber and Sahara, like we spoke in Pasuk Yud Aleph, and you needed to have specifically the Kedusha of Yosef to help be Leichem the Milchama, and that's why we had Velachati Shevet HaManashe with us, with the Bnei Reuven and Bnei Gad. And as we spoke, that idea is to bring all of Klal Yisrael together, to come into Eretz Yisrael all as one. Zahainu, that even if Be'etzem, for whatever reason, as we'll see later, that Reuven and Gad and Chati Shevet HaManashe did not take a chelik in actual Eretz Yisrael, but an Evar Yarden that had dinim of Eretz Yisrael. Al Kapanim, there was a shaykhis. They did have a shaykhis to Eretz Yisrael, because let's say the Tanai wouldn't paralyze. We'll see about that later also. But Be'etzem, they had a chelik in Eretz Yisrael as well. The only shaila is that we have to ask on the Malbim is that why was the Navi Makdim the Indian of the commanding of the Shaitrim to the officers to the people before the commanding of Yeshua to Bnei Gad and Bnei Reuven, which L'chera came first. Meaning, because what's the Seidat Dvarim? The Seidat Dvarim was that Yeshua spoke to the Bnei Gad and Bnei Reuven, and then he said Achinu Lechem Tzeda, and then they crossed over the Yarden. But in the Seder HaPsukim, it's Achinu Lechem Tzeda, prepare yourself food and prepare yourself for Malchama, and then Bnei Gad and Bnei Reuven. So that's, even according to the Malbim, it's a shtickle out of order in the Psukim. So in the Sefer Divrei Tova, he brings from the Sefer Meir Einai, I don't know who these people are, so he brings to explain like this. Yeshua first had to make sure that Bnei Gad and Bnei Reuven are going to be Mekayim the Tanai, and that they're willing to march in front of the rest of Klal Yisrael to be Leichem the Milchama. And once Bnei Gad and Bnei Reuven were masking to go Lefnei Ha'am, to go take Klal Yisrael into battle, so then he was mitzavet them, the rest of the Klal Yisrael, to prepare food and to prepare the knives and the swords that they needed for the war. Because meaning at this point already, HaKadosh Baruch Hu was already maftiach him that he'll be Masech in the Milchama. A, he has the Bnei Gad and Bnei Reuven that are going to fight, and B, he has the Avtacha from HaKadosh Baruch Hu that he can go to war now. And the Pashtus we could say, and it's not wrong, I mean you have to go through the Cheshbon again, that the same day that he commanded Yeshua, the same day that Yeshua commanded Bnei Gad and Bnei Reuven, that was the same day as he was Mitzvah the Am of Achinu Lechem Tzeda. And all that was after HaKadosh Baruch Hu told him to cross over the Yarden, which was after the Yemei Evle Shel Moshe. He spoke to Bnei Gad and Bnei Reuven, and they were asking him to go Chalutza B'Rosh Ha'am, to be the generals of the army, to go in front of the rest of Klal Yisrael, like we're going to see in the Hemshech HaPsukim. And then after that, Yeshua was Mitzvah the Shaitrim, the officers, to L'Hoidia Sa'am, to notify the nation that they're going to cross over the Yarden in the next 3 days, after the next 3 days. And therefore, that's why the Navi started off with the Inyan of the Tzivoy of Bnei Gad and Bnei Reuven. And, and then said the rest of the story. Because the ikar of what's going on over here is the making sure that we could cross over the Yarden with the Kiyum HaTanai of Bnei Gad and Bnei Reuven. And once we have that, now we could go. And not only once we have that, now we could go, but now we need to talk to the rest of Klal Yisrael, that they need to prepare themselves for what they need to do to cross the Yarden to get into Eretz Yisrael, that they shouldn't be afraid, which is what we spoke about last week, that a big part of the leader of Klal Yisrael's job is to tell the people, to tell the children of Israel not to be afraid, and that they should be able to go into Eretz Yisrael without any fear. And without this, he was able to talk to Bnei Gad and Bnei Reuven the day that they crossed over the Yarden. He didn't need a few days, but he needed the 3 days to be able to communicate his message, not just to Bnei Gad and Bnei Reuven, but to communicate the message to the rest of Klal Yisrael. Now another question that we have to ask ourselves and we have to think about is that Moshe Rabbeinu said already that they're going to be the ones that are going to lead Klal Yisrael into Eretz Yisrael and fight the war for them, and then they're going to go back after everything is done. Shaila is what that done is, but we'll get to that soon. So why did Yeshua need to double check with them if they're going to be Mekandit tonight? But that's the Hemshech we'll see. We'll see about that also. Okay. Next ha'ara, which we mentioned, which we're going to be miyashav now, is velaraubni, velagdi, velachati shevet hamnashe. And we asked that why doesn't it say velachati shevet hamnashi, like it says velaraubni, velagdi. Now we know, just to be makdim, that shteit in Chazal, that it's a Shem Hashem on them. This is the Haruveni, Hagadi. Over here, there's no hey, but it's just Villaruveni, Villagadi. Mashen Ken Hamanashe has a hey. So we're going to get to that soon in Mr. Sham. But to be makdim, the idea is that the reason why they had Mishpachas Haruveni, Mishpachas Hagadi, is because you have the Yud and the hey, because the Shechina, it's to be Moiras, to teach us that the Shechina is shy around them. And we'll see that the word is that even when these people are not in Eretz Yisrael, the Shechina is shy around them, wherever they are, because they're from the Shiftei Ka, the Yud and the Hey, that they have on their names, and wherever they might be. Now, it's just l'chayr in the diktuk, in the Pashut translation of and the definition of the words. When you're talking about half a shevet, it's not proper to use the term haminashi. If you're talking to everybody, then you could say the shevet haminashi. But when we're talking about the Ruveni, because every single person from Shevet Ruvain calls himself Ruveni, and Yeshua was talking to every single person in Shevet Ruvain, even if the pasuk is referring to the shevet as a general klal, as a general rule, but the pasuk is talking about Haruveni, because Yeshua is talking to each individual person from Shevet Ruvain. And as we spoke before, that Yeshua was concerned about each and every Yid getting into Eretz Yisrael, each and every Yid from Shevet Ruvain, what their tafkid was to fight the war, to bring them into Eretz Yisrael, and every single Yid from, let's say, Shevet Asher, whose tafkid was just to go into Eretz Yisrael, and not be Yavar Chalutzim Lefnei Ha'am. But it doesn't say that he spoke specifically to the whole Shevet Menashe, because he only spoke to half of them. And the Indian of Chatzi Shevet Menashe is only half a tzibur. So it's half of the Shevet HaMenashe, and not HaMenashi, because HaMenashi would be kailal everybody. But l'chayra, there's welcome to ask on this, because we do find the pasuk in Sefer Dvarim says v'nikach es artzam v'nitna l'nachla l'ruveni v'lagodi v'lachati Shevet HaMenashi. We do find in the pasuk that it says they'll take their land and that was given to them in the Nachala for the Ruveni and for the Godi and the Chati Shevet HaMenashi. So we could explain up the Malbim over there that says that the Malbim in Dvarim Chav Tezayim says that the pasuk is coming to say that Eretz Sichon and Oig, the land of Sichon and Oig, that the Bnei Gad and Bnei Ruvain took, was so beloved by them when they conquered it, and they had a war and they conquered it. And really everybody fought that war, but because it was so chaviv to them, it was given specifically to these 2.5 shvatim, so that they shouldn't get a chelik in Eretz Yisrael. And he says from here you can see, and we could understand, that we're so batuach in the Yehusha Sa'aretz, and that Yikarehim Ha'od V'Chaviva. It's very interesting. He says a lashon that if I want to trade, if I want to trade something with you, and I'm going to get the better end of the deal, so then there's no reason why I shouldn't do it, right? So he says a lashon kederach haaretz shemisha neisen at the davar shabiyodai b'kdei sheikabel davar achrei zeh davar acher betach hadavar hashen yokar habe me'adavar sheneisen ata. Give me that. I want to see that, and then you replace it with something even bigger and something even better. So Avada, that's what it is. So that's what they're getting over here, that they're going first, but they're going to get their own chelik in Eretz Yisrael also. We could say also that Moshe Rabbeinu is being meramis over here, that we are so batuach in Yerusha's Oretz, in fighting with the Goyim of Eretz Canaan, because the fact that we were able to conquer Sichon and Oig, and we were able to create a yishuv over there, so Memelo, we're going to be able to conquer the Lamed Aleph Malachim, and throw out the Zayin Amamin, and be able to settle in Eretz Yisrael. Now, L'chayra was only given to Chati Shevet HaMenashe, and what's interesting is that we're going to see, if you go through the parasha, in Parashas Matas, Parak Lamed Beis, there's 42 psukim that the Torah dedicates to the whole story of Bnei Gad and Bnei Ruvain, And the Torah says like this: the Bnei Menashe is like they're like the sore thumb in this whole story. Are they part of the sugya? Are they not part of the story? Where do they fall in Bechlal? Now, this that they went to conquer this land of Sichon and Oig, and it was given to Shevet HaMenashe, the Chachi Shevet HaMenashe. It wasn't like there was a specific pressure that, these people, because you won this war, so you could get it. But there were a few Yechidim, or a small group of people from Bnei Menashe that went to conquer, like the Pasuk says in Pasuk Lamates, Vayelchu Bnei Machir Menashe Gilada, and the sons of Machir Menashe went to Gilad, Vayelachduha, and they conquered it. Vayitin Moshe es HaGilad l'Machir, and Moshe gave Gilad to Machir, V'yor Menashe halach v'yilker es Chavoseyam, v'noivach halach v'yilker es Kenos v'Sbnei. And Machir was another child, and Yor Menashe went and trapped the Chavoseyam, which is the areas, the outside of the city. Noivach halach, and Noivach went to Yilkeres Kenos B'nai. He went to Kenos and he conquered that and all the other small villages around it. So it wasn't so much that they did it on their own. It wasn't coming because there was a Tanai. It was coming because they felt that was the right thing to do. And that's why the Pasuk says that Nitna L'Nachla L'Chati Shevet HaMenashi, that to be Miramis, to remind us that the Nachla B'nei Menashe was very much from the personal ritzinus of the people in the Shevet, which is very interesting, because really the whole story of Bnei Gad and Bnei Reuven is also very much tali in that they had Mikne Rav, and they wanted to have this as their personal chelik of, not Eretz Yisrael, but, their chelik and their Nachla. And the Torah doesn't want to push onto them that they weren't batuach in Nachlas Eretz Yisrael, and the idea was that the Velchazi Shevet HaMenashi is coming to show us that there was a specific chibas haaretz that they had, hagam that they didn't have a chelik in Eretz Yisrael, but they had a chelik in Nachla outside Eretz Yisrael, and they were focused on that. Stam ha'ara was good to know. Sometimes it says shevet, and sometimes it says mata. Right? Sometimes we'll say mata menashe, like the pasuk says in Perkov base later. So when do we say mata and when do we say shevet? Right? Parshas Matos, so Roshei HaMatos, not Roshei HaShvatim, Roshei HaMatos. So mata is used when you're talking about an executive order, so to speak, for the specifics of that shevet, and all the individuals in that shevet, that's called a shevet. And they need to be masaj or something, they need to take care of something, and they have the shutvus that they're in this shevet. So that's mata, because they're all samech on the mata hashevet, they're all driven for the same idea, they're all motivated for the same focus. Like Rashi says in the end of Parshas B'chukaisai, chavav chavav, mate lechem. Rashi says mishon lechem, sha'odam samech ala lechem sh'alidei kach yichya, that the person is relying on bread, and with this he'll be able to live. So to the people of the shevet are samech, they rely on the mata shevet, on the reason and on the drive that this specific shevet has. And the union of a shevet is the tzibur that are mishtatif together to do whatever they're supposed to do. And it's interesting that in the beginning, now Yeshua calls him Shevet Menashe, because he's talking to this specific tzibur. So he says Chati Shevet HaMenashe. But after they crossed over Eretz Yisrael and they fought the war and they showed their strength to Bnei Yisrael, he calls them Chatzi Mata Menashe. And that's to be mechabed them, because even though they're half a shevet, but Mikol Malkum, the strength that they showed in the battles and on the war front was extremely powerful. So Yeshua wanted to be mechabed them, so he calls them Mata Menashe, that even though it was half a shevet, but they had the strength of an entire shevet, of an entire tzibur, and mainly you could be samech on them, and you could be it's efshar to be samech on them and to rely on them. And another reason maybe we could say is that the pshat is that later on in Parakov Beis, which we'll get to in a few years, maybe less, that there was a story there that Bnei Gad and Bnei Reuven built a matzeva, built a mizbeach, and the rest of the Klal Yisrael got very nervous that they were building a for Avodah Zarah, so it turned into a whole machlekes. And over here it says Chatzi Shevet HaMenashe with the Hey. HaMenashe with the Hey HaYediyah to teach us that this tzibur is a tzibur that's the Muvchar Shevet, the best part, the choicest part of the Shevet. And it's Mishum Kvaidam to bring out a certain covet for them, because later on in Perich of Beis, like we said, Klal Yisrael had tinus and the Chatzi Shevet HaMenashe. And it doesn't say HaMenashe, it just says Chatzi Shevet Menashe without the Hey, because over there it's talking about that they're doing something wrong. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the story of Bnei Gad and Bnei Reuven. In Parshas Matos and in Parshas Devarim as well, the Torah tells us that Bnei Gad and Bnei Reuven had mikneh rav. They had a lot of cattle that they needed, they had a lot of animals and cattle that they needed a lot of space for, and they were giborim, they were extra strong warriors, stronger than the rest of the Shvatim, and that's how they were able to be kind of all this mikneh, because of the battles that they fought, they were able to take. And it's interesting, why do we say Bnei Gad and Bnei Reuven? Reuven is a chara older, but the pashtus is, without getting too complex and too deep over here, Bnei Gad were the stronger ones. So when we're talking about the people that were warriors, we're going to be referring to the strongest ones, and that's Bnei Gad. Bnei Gad were stronger than the Bnei Reuven, and they had even more mikneh than Bnei Reuven. And we know that the pasuk says, Baruch Marach of God, Treif Zuraya Avkadkai, the way that they would kill the enemy, they wouldn't just cut off their heads, but they would slice off the heads together with one arm. And it was Zuraya Avkadkai, and that was the signature of the killing of Shevet Gad. And they were very powerful, they were able to expand their gvulim and their boundaries, and where they needed to go and get what they wanted. After HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave over the land of Sichon and Og to the Yidden, so Bnei Gad and Bnei Reuven came, and they wanted this chelik of Ever Yarden because they had a lot of animals, and it was very good to pasture. It was very good land to pasture the animals there. And Moshe told them, being that this is a very big piece of land, and you know you're going to be lonely over there, so to speak, so he sent half of Shevet Menashe there as well. We're going to get to talk a little bit more about which half, and what's this whole business of Chatzi Shevet Menashe, chopping up the Shevet. But the pashtus is that Moshe is just sending another Shevet there. So if you think about it, we're missing 2.5 Shvatim from Eretz Yisrael. It's really only 10 Shvatim. 10.5 Shvatim have a chelik in Eretz Yisrael, and the other 2.5 Shvatim have a chelik outside of Eretz Yisrael. So Moshe told them, and Moshe also told them, that I'm going to make a Tanai with you, that you're going to have to cross over the Yarden together with everybody else to fight the war, and you'll fight the war in front of everybody else. You have to do the Ikarish Tadlis and Mulchama until you win over the enemies, and after you make the Tanai, then you could go back to your Nachla on the other side of the Yarden. And the 2 Shvatim were maskim, and the 2.5 Shvatim were maskim to the Tanai, as we're going to see in the Psukim here. And once they were Makabel the Tanai, they were given that chelik in Ever Yarden, like the Psukim say. Now, what we do have to speak out and what we do have to know is that the Tanai was that they have to stay until the end of the Kibush, which took 7 years. And that's all that Moshe asked them. That Moshe says that you have to wait 7 years, not really 7 years, but until you'll finish the Mulchama, until they'll be able to rest, which means till after the Kibush, till after the war. But they said that they're going to stay until all the Shvatim are settled in the land of the 7 years of Chiluk Aretz as well. So they waited another 7 years until they went back home, until everything was settled. And now, at this point in time, in Pasuk Yud Beis, what we're talking about now, it came the time that they're crossing over the Yarden to fight and to conquer Eretz Yisrael. Now, this is the time that we're going to be Mekayim the Tanai that the Bnei Gad and Reuven are talking about in the Psukim and Chumash. So Yeshua called the people, the Rashi Hashvatim of Bnei Gad and Reuven and Chatzi Shevet Menashe, and he told them like this: remember those words that Moshe Rabbeinu spoke to you, that you have to go to help Klal Yisrael fight the war because it is tonight that you have, and you have to help your brothers, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to help fight with you, and Hashem will make it easier for you to settle. Like the pasuk says, "Vayter Hashem Elokeichem iniach lechem, v'nosal lechem es eretz hazois." Okay. We know Hilchas tonight from this, the Mishnah in Kedushin Daf Samach Aleph for Meir Omer. Kol Tanai she'eni Tanai b'nei Gad b'nei Reuven eni Tanai. Any Tanai that's not like b'nei Gad b'nei Reuven is not a Tanai. The Chacham learned from here the Dinei Tanoim, which is Meforsh in the Torah by Chalukas Aretz, that after Klal Yisrael conquered Eretz Gilad, which was in Evrei Yarden, the Bnei Gad b'nei Reuven wanted to be Mekabel their sister Nachla instead of their Chelik in Eretz Yisrael, and Moshe Rabbeinu was asking to give it to them on condition that they're going to fight, like the pasuk says in Parshas Matos. Vayomer Moshe Aleim, Im Yavru Bnei Gad b'nei Reuven itchem es hayarden kol cholos lamachom lefnei Hashem, v'nichbesha ha'aretz lefneichem, v'nesatem lehem es eretz hagidol la'achuza, v'im lo yavru cholutzim itchem, v'neichzu b'seichem eretz Canaan. It says like this: if you're going to go fight a war, and you're going to conquer the war in front of the other Shvatim, meaning ahead of the other Shvatim, that you're going to be the major warriors in this battle, so then I'll give you Eretz Gilad La'achuza. But if you're not going to, then you're going to have to settle in Eretz Canaan. It's almost like you'll be punished, like you won't get what you want, you'll have to settle in Eretz Yisrael. So, there's a Ramban in Chumash and Parshas Matos towards the very end of the Parsha, and that tells us a little bit about where Shevet Menashe falls into this picture altogether. He says, originally Shevet Menashe didn't join with Bnei Gad and Reuven. Once that land of Eretz HaGilad was divided up into two Shvatim, he saw that it was very big and it was a lot more than they needed. He wanted to give somebody else a chance to be able to have that spacious area. And there were people from Shevet Menashe that wanted that. Maybe there were people that had a lot of cattle. And he gave him that. Why only half? It doesn't necessarily mean like he split it evenly exactly, but it means part of them. And the Ramban brings psukim to back up that chatzi doesn't mean specific, exactly half, but a chelik. And he brings some psukim that, as we'll see later in Perek Yud Zayin, that Bnei Menashe had 8 basic families, and they were all warriors, and 6 of them crossed over the Yarden, like we're going to see in Perek Yud Zayin, by Yehila Bnei Menashe, and Yisrael Mishpachaisam. They made 9 chalakim, Shavim Latisha Hamatas. They made 9 chalakim to be divided up into 10 parts of the family, into the 10 families, to 9 families. Velachtzi chelik Reuben nisharu, v'nei also neshevet kulei chalakim. The Ramban goes and discusses how everything was divided up. 9 pieces, 10 pieces. Okay. The idea is that Moshe asked from them to go together with Bnei Gad and Reuven because they had some kayach to be able to fight against them. They're able to fight against the guy over there. Okay. Now here's where the fun starts, Mitzvah Shem. The sugya that I want to discuss. And this was sort of a hakdama, but here we go. The Yerushalmi Bikurim says that we know that we don't bring, the Mishnah says in Bikurim, that we don't bring Bikurim from Evrei Yarden. It has to be from Eretz Yisrael. So the Mishnah says, because it's not considered Eretz Zavas Chalav Udvash. And the Yerushalmi adds another reason, because the pasuk says, Asher Nasata Li Hashem, that the land that you bring Bikurim from has to be from the land that Hashem gave you. And the Gemara darshans, and not something that I took for myself. Who are people that took something for themselves? That's the chelik of Bnei Gad and Reuven. So Yerushalmi speaks that in Afkamina between the 2 reasons. If the chelik of Chatzi Shevet HaMenashe you could bring Bikurim from, because if the problem is because it's not considered Eretz Zavas Chalav Udvash, so you taka can't bring from there because it's taka not Eretz Zavas Chalav Udvash. But if the pshat is that it's if the pshat is that it's something that they were not l'mayatzmam, v'loisha natalti li la'atzmi, so the chelik of Menashe, it's after you could bring Bikurim from there because they didn't take it from themselves because Moshe pushed them into it. So it's sort of mashma from here that Moshe didn't make a tanai with Bnei Menashe because Moshe just pushed them there to go. And in order for them to go, so Moshe promised them a lot of land there. Since it's not what's this whole business, l'chara, we need to understand that a little bit. So the Mikdavar, the Netziv writes in Parshas Dvarim that Moshe Rabbeinu saw that in Evrei Yarden Torah wasn't going to be so stark if it's just Bnei Gad and Reuven, and he brings it from Avos Nasan. So he was mishtadel to plant Torah, gedolei Torah she'iru mechshakei haaretz. He wanted there to be a tremendous light of Torah in the Eber HaYarden, and the Bnei Menashe, they were the Rebbeim, and they were Talmidei Chachamim, and they were Dayanim, and they were able to shtel avek Torah the way that they should be, like he brings from Psukim, from Sefer Shoftim, that from Machir Yardu Mechayikim, that from Machir was Bnei Menashe, that's where the Mechayikim came from, that's where the Dayanim came from. And he goes right to, he says that the Shevet Yehuda was Meshadach with Shevet Menashe. I don't know how that's going to work for, Mashiach Ben Yosef, Mashiach Ben David, that's a separate shmuz. But the Rosh Yeshivas were from Shevet Yehuda, and these Einiklech of Menashe were also Einiklech of Shevet Yehuda, like the Gemara says in Yavam Stav Samach Beis, that Bnei Suguv ben Chetzrain married a woman, Bas Mochir ben Menashe, married a granddaughter of Menashe, and the children were Mechayikim ba'Yisha, and they were the Rebbeim then. So Moshe wanted to give them shtellas on the other side of the Yarden, so he gave them shtellas, and they had a lot of business over there in Sigavingit. Okay, now many Svarim have written on this pasuk and on this concept that the Briskerov writes that Menashe, there was no Tanai with the Chatzi Shevet Menashe. The Tanai was only Bnei Gad Bnei Reuven. And l'chayra, this pasuk says beferish that velaraubni, velagadi, velachatzi shevet haMenashe amar Yeshua leimer. That there's a cheres hadavar that Moshe told you that you have to go conquer Eretz Yisrael with the Tanai. So l'chayra, there's stark makom to say that the Bnei Menashe from this pasuk is pretty clear that the Chatzi Shevet HaMenashe is part of the velaraubni velagadi for the Tanai also. But the Brisker Rav and the Meshech Chochmah both say that the Bnei Menashe was not part of the Tanai B'chlal. So how does that work out in the Psukim? So I didn't think that it was a kasha on the Brisker Rav B'chlal from this pasuk. Just the way that you read the pasuk, it doesn't have to be that the Tanai. First of all, we're not up to the Tanai yet. He was just talking to them, and he was mentioning the Tanai to them. He wasn't telling them, "Oh, now you have to do it." We'll see to be medayik in pasuk Yud Gimel Yudalad also. But the concept is, I want to go through the Brisker Rav, read it inside, see how he says it, and then we'll explain it a little bit, and then we'll see if there's really a kasha what the Brisker Rav said or not. It's in Parshas Matos, the Brisker Rav. We don't find that Moshe made a Tanai with Shevet Menashe. Only with Bnei Gad Bnei Reuven. And the way to explain this is, what would be with that piece of land in Ever Yarden if it wasn't given over to Bnei Gad Bnei Reuven? If they wouldn't be Mekayim the Tanai, then they'll have to move into Eretz Yisrael together with the other Shvatim. But Tzarech Loimar, they're Shaykh L'chol Yisrael. So we have to say that part of Ever Yarden was Shaykh to Kol Yisrael. And it was even Shaykh for Kahanim to be Zeich in it, because it wasn't part of the Nachlas Oretz, wasn't part of the Yerushas Oretz. It's a separate cheshbon, it's a separate thing. It's very interesting. We're going to get back to this later also. That Bnei Gad Bnei Reuven were given this piece of land, it was not from the lands that were promised by the Bris Ben Absarim to Avram Avinu. And the Rambam writes at the end of Hilchos Shmita V'Yovel that the Kohanim were only zeichet to the pieces of land and the areas that there was a krisas bris by Avram Avinu by the Bris Ben Absarim. Being that that's the case, really Mikra Adin, they had to hold on to Eretz Yisrael. The Etzem, they had a chelik in Eretz Yisrael, just like every other Yid has a chelik in Eretz Yisrael. Norvos, they were mevakish that they should have a chelik in Eva Yarden. So it was this, and so Moshe Rabbeinu made the time with them, and it was Nischacha Halacha. To know that if they're going to be Mekayim the Tanai and fight the wars like they should, so then they'll be Mekabel their Chelek of Yerusha, so Oretz on the Ever Yarden. Avlam Loi Hoy Mekayim, but if they wouldn't be Mekayim the Tanai, Harei Chazak Din Kibatchila, then the Din is going to go back to the original way that it was supposed to be, She Yerusha Som Eretz Yisrael, Malkum Shenichar Sabris, that they're going to Yarush in Eretz Yisrael, like the original Malkum of Krisa Sabris, with the places that Avram Avinu, that was promised Avram Avinu. V'sham shalei nichras abris ha'yishayich l'kol Yisrael v'gam l'kahana. This that there was Eva Yarden, that wasn't promised to, that wasn't part of the bris. It was shaykh to all the Yidden, and it was also shaykh to the Kahana. Aval chat shevet hamanasha shem kiblu eretz oig k'dechsiv dvarim uksiv hu yikari eretz rifai. Now by chat shevet hamanasha it says that they were makabel eretz oig, as we spoke before, that they got Gilad in those areas which was the land of Sichan and Oig. So the pasuk calls it Eretz Refaim, and Rashi says he oisa shenu sati l'Avram. That's the chelik of Eretz Yisrael that was given to Avram. Haresh shenichras l'abris. So the chelik that Menashe got had a krisas bris on it. Ve'eretzu ha'osim mitzad adin liyis v'chalukas aretz. So now the chelik of Menashe it has a din of chalukas aretz on it, not like the chelik of Bnei Gad Bnei Reuven. It was just nischadish over here because Moshe Rabbeinu pushed them that it should be given to Chavti Shevet HaMenashe without a girl and without a chalukah. So the Bris Grove is being mechalik. There's the land of Bnei Gad Bnei Reuven, that the reason why they're able to get it, anyone from Klal Yisrael could have asked for it and could have gotten it, because it wasn't part of the chelik of the Eretz Yisrael that was promised to Avraham Avinu by the Bris Ben Absar. Now the chelik of Chati Shevet HaMenashe was promised to Avraham Avinu by the Bris Ben Absar, and Mamela, he could take that. Meaning that is part of Yerushas Aretz. Bnei Gad Bnei Reuven is not part of Yerushas Aretz, and Bnei Menashe is part of Yerushas Aretz, even though it's outside Eretz Yisrael, but it's part of the promise, so to speak, the bris of the Eretz Yisrael that Klal Yisrael is going to get when they get into Eretz Yisrael. Haresh shenichras aleh bris, the Bnei Menashe had a bris on it. Ve'eretzu ha'osim mitzad adin liyis v'chalukas aretz. Rak t'nischad shaloch shidnu es l'chati shevet hamanashe without a girl and a chalukah. Avol be'etzem din harei b'chlal Eretz Yisrael. Be'etzem adin, it has a din of Eretz Yisrael on it. V'chein lo history on klal u'klal. And there's no mokum to say that there was even a Tanai for Bnei Menashe necessary at all. Mavar ha'Yushalmi b'Bikurim, and the Briskrov explains the Yerushalmi and Bikurim that we mentioned. The Eva Yarden, whom Masher Natalti Me'atzmi. Eva Yarden is what I took on my own. Uksiv v'Bikurim, and the pasuk says by Bikurim Shenasatali, what HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave me. Avachad Shevet HaMenashe le'notul me'atzmi. Avachad Shevet HaMenashe didn't take on their own. Ukvar Biera Zikni Goin Yisrael Zatzal, Rabbi Fol Shapiro, who was the Edom of the Nitziv, who was the Shver of Reb Chaim, Brisgrov's grandfather, was Biara Al Piaderech Shekosavni. He explained like this: V'avshu Hu Yoshua Masafri Dasher Nishba, and he was also Yashva together with the Safri and the Pasuk Dasher Nishba, which we'll get to in a little bit. The Efsher B'Pashtus Yoser. It could be even simpler than the way we explained. The Kevin de Ikra Din Hosen Nichlalos B'Chalukas Haaretz, being that it was never Nichlal in Chalukas Haaretz, Havila Notlu Me'atzman. It's not considered Notlu Me'atzman because it was given to them. Moshe Rabbeinu pushed them to do it. Aval Bnei Gad V'Ruvain to be Ikra Din the Mashaloch LeHosim Chalukas Haaretz Alarak Eladei Tnom Nischad Shikhu Sham Havish and Atalta Me'atzmi. Bnei Gad V'Ruvain that the Ikra had Din that what they took wasn't from Chalukas Haaretz. There was no Krisas bris over there. So when they had to make it tonight, and it was Nischadish that they could take that piece of land over there. So that's Natalta Me'atzmi. Masha'in came, the Bnei Menashe, there's no mokum to say Natalta Me'atzmi, because that's Eretz Hashem Nasatu Li Hashem. Or, a worst case, Moshe pushed them to take it. Now many people ask in the Briskirov, that it's Meforsh of the Pesukim here, that Bnei Menashe were part of the Chelukah, that they were Chelukah tonight, together with Bnei Gad Bnei Reuven. Well, it's not true, because Meforsh in the words of the Briskirov himself, the difference between Bnei Gad Bnei Reuven and Chati Shevet HaMenashe. Bnei Gad Bnei Reuven were Lochel Me'atzma, and it's not shaykh to the din of Yerushas Aretz. What was going on over here was there was the Tanai that if they're going to fight together with Klal Yisrael, so then they're going to get this chelik. But Bnei Menashe, they taka were Yerush it was taka given to them. Now, to make this year even more brisk, we're going to go through what Reb David writes, what Reb David said over in Parashas Matis as well. Reb David has Arichos being masber, what his father said, but it's just kedai to go through because there's so many Geshmaki Yediyas here, Bechlal and Diyukim in the parasha of how to understand the sugya of Bnei Gad Bnei Reuven. Mitzvah Shem will give a shir on that. It's 42 psukim, Zecher, and not by chance that it's 42 psukim, is Zecher Oimek here. But let's see what Reb David says. Reb David is strict larichas, but we'll work through it as well. He starts off with the psukim. Let's read some of the psukim inside. Just the first couple of psukim. It's Perek Lamed Beis. It begins in Parshas Matos, Pasuk Aleph. We'll read the first 4 psukim. We make the Rav Hoyle b'nei Ruven b'nei Gad Otzma Oid. The b'nei Ruven and b'nei Gad had tremendous amount of animals. Vayiru es Eretz Yazer et Eretz Gilad v'hine amokem mokem mikne. And they saw the land of Yazer and the land of Gilad, and it was a good place where a lot of grass was growing, which was very good for their animals. Pasuk Beis, Vayavoyu b'nei Gad b'nei Ruven, and b'nei Gad b'nei Ruven came, Vayomer al Moshe v'al Elazar kain v'al Nesiya Eid Lemor. They said to Moshe, Elazar, and the Nesiya Eid as follows: Atarais v'divain v'Yazer v'Nimra v'Cheshboin v'El Olei u'Sivam u'Nevoyu v'Oin. These are all names of places. Atarais v'divain, we know what they are because it's the Gemara in Brachas that says that you have to do Shnai Mikra, even on the pasuk of Atarais v'divain. These are all names of places. Pasuk Dalet, Ha'oretz, this land, Asher Hika Hashem l'fnei Adas Yisrael Eretz Miknehi, this land that Hashem, punished the Sichin and Oig over here. Asher Hika Hashem l'fnei Adas Yisrael is the land of Mikneh. V'lavadecha Mikneh. V'yomru, Im atzanu chen beinecha, if we find favor in your eyes, Yutan es ha'aretz hazos lavadecha la'chuza, give this piece of land to your servants to dwell here. Al tabireinu es ha'yarden, and we'll stay here and we won't cross over the Yarden. But Yom Moshe l'bnei Gad l'bnei Ruven. Moshe says to bnei Gad l'bnei Ruven, Ha'chechem yavoyu l'melchama v'atum teishu poi. Your brothers are going to go fight a war on the other side of the Yarden. You're going to stay here. V'lama siniyun es lev bnei Yisrael. Why should you not be together with the rest of bnei Yisrael? Me'avaris ha'aretz asher nasan lehem Hashem. And you shouldn't cross over into the land that Hashem is giving all of them, meaning you included. Kayasu aveiseichem. This is what your fathers did. Don't do like the Meraglim to separate themselves from Klal Yisrael. Just go together with Klal Yisrael. Let's do everything together. On and on. 42 psukim of the whole back and forth with Moshe and all the areas of where they fought and where they got the land and where they didn't get the land and the Tanai back and forth. So Reb David says that Reb David says that the Brisker Rav asked, why is it important for the Torah to tell us all the names of the places? Atara is a Divai, Nevai, Elalai. Why is all of that important? Why couldn't the Torah just tell us, we want this piece of land? They knew exactly where it was, they knew exactly what they were talking about, but the Torah has a very big arichos and also very detailed. And the Brisker Rav also asked, how could they ask that they should get Eretz Yisrael? There's a Chalukas Haaretz, and how could they get it without a Gera? So he brings the Brisker Rav, that the Brisker Rav explained with the Mishnah Bikurim, and then he brings the Yerushalmi, that we said, and he explains the Yerushalmi that there's enough Gemina if it's from Shevet Menashe, not from Shevet Menashe. And then he brings from Rebbe Fol Shapiro, B'Yosef b'Minsk. He heard from Rebbe Fol Shapiro, the Brisker Rav said he heard from his grandfather when he was in Minsk, to explain the Yerushalmi according to the Sifri. We didn't speak out the Sifri, so let's speak it out now. The Pasuk says in Parshas Kisah, V'yashanish b'Hashem l'aveiseinu l'oses lanu, is coming to exclude Prat le'eva ha'yarden shenotu me'atzma. That Ashanish b'Hashem l'aveiseinu l'oses lanu is to exclude Eva Yarden that they took themselves. So you see from the Sifri that they didn't take from themselves is totally if it was given in the Shvuah of Avram Avinu or not. And he brings a Rashi about the Bris Ben Absarim, and in Parshas Lech Lecha it says V'es HaRefaim. Rashi says that the Eretz Oig Shenamar Ba Hu Yikra Eretz Refaim, as we mentioned, and he goes on bringing more psukim in Dvarim. Eretz Refaim Techoshe Vafhi. And Rashi says, this is also not something that he gave to Avram. And right in Parashas Dvarim it says, V'yezer hagilad v'chol habashim amleches oig nasati l'chatzi shevet hamanashe Ahu Yikri Eretz Refaim. Rashi says, this is what I gave Avram. So you see from all these psukim that there are two chalokim in Evar Yarden, what the Bnei God got and what the Bnei Menashe got. Masha Notul Me'atzmam, and what the Bnei Menashe were Makabel. What Bnei Menashe were Makabel had a Krisas Bris from the Bris Bnei Sorim, and then there was the Bnei God Meruven, what they asked for themselves. So the Briskov explains that he answers the second kasha. He says that they didn't have to make a girl. They only had to make a girl for the land that there was a Chalukas Haaretz, that there was a Shua and a Krisas Bris. Something that did not have a shvan or bris didn't need to be divided up with a girl. So the Reubeni and the Godi that asked to get their chelik in Eva Yarden, so it didn't need a shvan, it didn't need a krisas bris. So therefore the Torah had to speak out the names of the cities that they asked for, because Dafka, these pieces of Eretz Yisrael were given of Eva Yarden, I should say, were given to them without a girl. And not the rest of it. Meaning we have to be very specific where it had a girdle and where it didn't have a girdle. It's not just, okay, you have the sun, yeah, you got it if you do that tonight. That's not what it was. But it has to be that this piece of land had a krisas bris, that one didn't. And there's a very fine line in between, as we see from the Sifri, as we see from the Yerushalmi, as the Briskerov is explaining. So Reb David goes right there and he says, he asked the Briskerov that it's still Tzarachim, and how could it be that they're going to change the din of the girdle of Eretz Yisrael? Why? Because Eretz Yisrael is supposed to be divided up into 12 chalokim, to the 12 shvatim. And now these 2.5 shvatim took a chelak in Eva Yarde. So now there's going to be something missing in the Etzem Girl, in the Etzem Chalukas Haaretz. And he asks weiter that according to the Rambam, that if you have a king, a melech v'malchei Yisrael, a Jewish king that conquers pieces of land, so the Kehanim and the Leviim and can take from that land, and the bizas on Kechal Yisrael, and the bizas for all of Klal Yisrael. So in those areas of Eva Yarden that you didn't have a bris, that there was no krisas bris of the Bnei Gad and Bnei Reuven, so then the Kehanim and Levim could take from there also. And what right, in fact, David, what right does Bnei Gad and Bnei Reuven have to take it away from the rest of Klal Yisrael? The Chayr belongs to everybody. Now, Bishlama from the rest of Klal Yisrael, they didn't take anything away from them because they already be'etzem got a chelik in Eretz Yisrael. But the Kehanim and the Levim that don't have a chelik in Eretz Yisrael, so by Bnei Gad and Bnei Reuven moving into that chelik that there's no krisas bris, l'chayr it's taking away from the Kehanim and the Levim. So the Briskov explains that that's not a pshat. It's not a kasha. The Briskov explains that the din of Eva Yarden is not the same like a kibush melech mishara rotos, that like a king that's conquering other pieces of land. Because once it was given to Bnei Gad and Bnei Reuven, it has a din of Eretz Yisrael. Like the pasuk says, that this Eretz is going to be given to you la'achuza. It has a din of Yerusha. Once they moved in there, once they got it, after the Shevesh HaKivshu, after the Shevesh HaChilku, when they moved into their area of Eva Yarden, it has a din of achuza l'fnei Hashem. And l'fnei Hashem, l'chara changes the whole status of it. Now, the Zach is like this. So David said it's still a little bit shver, because when they asked for Bnei Gad and Bnei Reuven, it was for their piece of Eretz Yisrael, it was still like a din of a kibush melech, and because it was before they were kibush Eretz Yisrael. But it brings a medrash Rabbah in Bamidbar in Chof Beis Zayin, v'chein the moitzi b'Bnei Gad and Bnei Reuven shahayu ashirim, that they were very wealthy, v'ayela mikne gadol, and they had a lot of cattle, and they loved their money, and they settled outside of Eretz Yisrael, and they got punished that they were taken away in Galus before all the other Shvatim. And he says, according to the Briskerov, that Briskerov just told back a big chiddush, that once after Shevesh HaKivshu and Shevesh HaChilku, and they settled it, the pasuk says, that has the same din as Eretz Yisrael. So then why is it that they go into Galus first? And and it brings a pasuk in Sefer Yeshua and Parakhov Beis, which you mentioned before, that Bnei Yisrael said to Bnei Gad and Bnei Reuven, "Machim tama eretz achuzaschem ivru lechem el eretz achuzas Hashem asher sheichet shel mishkan Hashem." So they're talking about their chelik of Eretz Yisrael as their chelik of Eva Yarden, as if it's in Eretz Yisrael. So Reb David says that's tzarich here. But now Reb David goes on to be masbir more b'negeya l'inyanenu, our pasuk and how it stems with the Tanai, as we spoke before. He says it's clear in the psukim in the Tanai that Moshe made with them, with the Bnei Gad and Reuven about Eva Yarden, as we explained that it's dafka with Bnei Gad and Reuven and not the Chatzi Shevet HaMenashe. Like the pasuk says, Vayavoyu Bnei Gad and Reuven v'yemru al Moshe. In pasuk Vav, it says V'yemru Moshe Bnei Gad and Reuven achechem yavoyu. Also, no mention of Menashe. Pasuk Chav, Vayemru Lei Moshe Tasim Techolzu. To them, in pasuk Chavei, Vayemru Bnei Gad and Reuven al Moshe Lemar v'decha Yasu kasher Adoni Mitzava. So again and again, we don't find any mention of Bnei Menashe yet. And it's only later. Only when they were Messiah, the Indian of the Tanai, the pasuk says Gam as Chati Shevet HaMenashe by the Nesina. But in the Tanai, it's not mentioned at all. It's just Mavur in the Psukim. There's nothing to talk about. Read the Psukim, you'll see this. And he says L'cher yesh lefarish lefimash and Zbar Bnei Gad and Reuven notul mimakom shlei hoya lo bris krisas Avram k'mavur b'Rashi and Parshas Dvar, as we explained. V'alkein hoya tzrichim Tanai. Like Kaimu Tanai, hoya neichel Meretz Yisrael im kol shar v'shvatim. He says that if they wouldn't have been Mekayim the Tanai, then they would have to get Yehusha and Eretz Yisrael together with the other Shvatim, like it says in Pasuk Lamed, Vim lo yavru chalutzim. But if not, because every Tanai has to be if, yeah, and what's going to happen if not? That's what the Gemara says in Kedusha, and Samach Aleph, that's what the Gemara is coming to say. There has to be the Tanai of Nehin v'lav. Vim lo yavru chalutzim. But if you're not going to go over to fight, Yitchem, then you're going to have Yehusha and Eretz Canaan. Mashain came the chelik that Chatzi Shevet HaMenashe got an Eber Yarden, had it in a Krisas Bris, and they took it B'din Chalukas Aretz, and it was Nishadish by them that they didn't need a Garel and a Chalukah, which is very interesting, because the Etzem, they were the only ones that got away without a Garel and a Chalukah. And then Reb David asked the Kasha, that Tzarechir, Echav Shalema, that the Naila Nasib Negod and Reuven, so if we're in the Psukim by us, over here, Velaraubni, Velagdi, Velachati Shevet HaMenashe, Am Yishua Lemor, Zechor Esadoa, Shetziv Eschem Moshe, Nesheich of Yeshua Be'oretz, Shenosa Lechem Moshe, Be'ver Yarden, Vatem Tarchabun Shlefnei Achecha. So you see that Yeshua was Tevei Adam, even the Chatzi Shevet HaMenashe, that they should be part of the Tanai, that they were Mekayim, that they have to be Mekayim the Tanai together with Negod and Reuven. And David goes right, and he says to me, Pashtas Apsukim from Parshas Dvar. It's also much more like that, because he says, V'sa'oretz hazos Yerashnu, Nosati l'Reuveni v'Lagdi v'Yeser Hagila, Chol HaBosham, Mamleches Oig, Nosati l'Chatzi Shevet HaMenashe, V'atzav Eschem, V'esahi Lemor, Chalutzim Tavru l'Fnei Achechem, V'esh Yisrael. The Pashtas, it's mashma, that when he told them to cross over the Yarden Chalutzim, it's also going on Shevet Menashe. And Rashi says over there, that Vatzav Eschem, Rashi says that that's talking specifically about Bnei Gad and Bnei Reuven. And it's mashma that it's not going on at Chatzi Shevet HaMenashe. The Pashtus, it's going on all the psukim, like the Targum Yenison says, B'kadis Yaschar Shevet Reuven, Shevet Gad, Upalgus Shevet Menashe, Bidna Ahi. There's a Mufurish in the Targum that Chatzi Shevet HaMenashe is Bechlal L'Tnai, and that they're not going to be able to get Yehusha until everybody else gets Yehusha. Now, the Sifsei Chacham says something interesting. Chayra takes it very differently than the B'Shkirav and what we've been talking until now. And he says that this Rashi means that he's L'Bnei Gad and Bnei Reuven, and he's saying not to exclude Chatzi Shevet Menashe, but to exclude all the rest of Klal Yisrael. Which maybe the Bnei Yisrael says a similar thing also. And Zok David, L'Chayra yesh liyashiv zeh lefi ma shekos hamaron b'parshas v'zis habracha. Rav David wants to be miyashiv this kash on the Briskirov with another vart on the Briskirov in Parshas Esabracha. L'chayra ha-t'nai shal b'nei Gad b'nei Reuven ha-t'nai shal dinim mamanis. L'chayra, what was this tonight? L'chayra was a din. It was a mamanis dig din. Shem yirtzu l'nchal sham bei vayarten shich l'shenkach l'kaim t'nam l'ava chalutza. This is where he says a murder gechidush. Briskirov says a murder gechidush about the Yehusha of b'nei Gad b'nei Reuven and the difference between that and the Chatzi Shevet HaMenashe. He says the Pashtus is that if you want to do something, then you have to be Mekayim the Tanai. If you're not Mekayim the Tanai, then it doesn't go through. But the Bishkarov said that's Bechlal not, if you medayik in the Psukim, like the Bishkarov did, so then it's very different than just a regular Mamas Digga tonight. There's a tonight that changed everything. He says, Mishahizkim HaKadosh Baruch Hu L'Tnoam Shehisnu, Nasas Et Tzivay Hashem Shekein Yiyah. Once HaKadosh Baruch Hu was masking to their tonight, so then there was a tzivay from Hashem that's how they have to do it. Meaning that there's no backing out on this tonight. It's not like a tonight that I'm going to give you money if you clean my car. I'm going to give you a burger if you clean my car for me, and if not, I won't give it to you. So if you don't clean my car, then I don't have to give you the burger. He says like this, you have to. There was a chiyuv for them to go fight the war, whether they liked that or not, right? And then they could take their chelik in Eivah Yarden. But if they're not going to be Mekayim tonight, then they can't be Noichel in Eivah Yarden. And if they're not going to do that, it's not just that they're going to be over on the tonight, but they're also going against the Tzivui of Hashem. And it's also for them to be made for this tonight. And Bishkar brings a pasuk. He says, the pasuk says, if you're not going to do this, if you're not going to do this, then you're going to be Chatasim Lashem. So it's mavur that it became a Tzivui Hashem. And if you're not going to do it, then there's a chet that you did. And this is the pshat in the psukim in pasuk Chav Aleph that says whenever it says l'fnei Hashem by Melchama, it means it's Melchamas Mitzvah. By the way, that's just good to know. And you're going to conquer the land l'fnei Hashem, and then you're going to settle. And then you're going to be clean. You're going to be parted from this. V'hainu, the Yunikim Yisrael etzem kimatnai sheyesh shara oris biyada. You're going to be parted from the whole tonight that the whole thing is totally. Gam Yunikim Hashem. It's not just Nikim from the tonight, but it's Yunikim Hashem that they weren't over and they weren't made for the tzivui of Hashem. And that's why it says V'atzaveschem be'esahi. V'atzaveschem be'esahi doesn't mean that I will tell them just a simple dvar be'alma, but it became a tzivui of Hashem that they have to be mekayim the tonight. Well, if he's after Loimar, the after etzam atnai metchila hoyim bnei Gad bnei Reuven v'loyim chatzi shevet HaMenashe, when bnei Gad bnei Reuven came and originally asked Moshe Rabbeinu, could we have this chelik of Eretz Yisrael of Eivah Yarden? So, and then Moshe said, we'll make it tonight. But then Hashem said that you have to do it. There was no more. It's a tonight. It's a tonight that you have to be mekayim, and not only do you have to be mekayim, you have a mitzvah to mekayim it, and if you're not, you're chatas and Lashem. If you are mekayim, then you're yisim nikim Hashem and Yisrael. So mikol mokum tzivui Hashem kach kol gam es chatzi shevet HaMenashe. The Tanai had nothing to do with shevet Menashe, period. But the tzivui that grew out of the Tanai, after the lav and the hain of the Tanai, that now is going to be mechayev even bnei Menashe as well. They didn't ask for it. They didn't ask for anything. They got pushed into it by Moshe Rabbeinu, as we said from the Rabban. When we come welcome tzivui Hashem al kach kol gam es chatzi shevet HaMenashe. Came shegam him nechel b'Eivah Yarden. The Nachal and Eivah Yarden became a new tzivui of Hashem, and that's the pshat in the psukim why it says in the pasuk over here chatzi shevet HaMenashe, because they have to be mekayim the tzivui of Hashem. We're not talking what Yeshua is telling them. He's saying Zachar as a davar shetziva Hashem. He's talking about what Hashem commanded them. He's not talking. He doesn't say. If you look in the psukim doesn't say remember the tonight that Moshe Rabbeinu made with you. That's how he's talking about here. He's talking about you have to make sure that you're mekayim the tzivui of Hashem. The tzivui of Hashem is going over to Menashe also, not just bnei Gad bnei Reuven. The efshetim lo hayu chatzi shevet HaMenashe halchem chalutzim u'mulchama. He says he takes it a step further, and he says, let's say chatzi shevet HaMenashe wouldn't have been mekayim their chelik at it tonight. He says it's possible that they would still get the chelik in Eivah Yarden because it's not totally in the tonight b'chlal. But they would still be over on the tzivui of Hashem, that Hashem told them that this is what they have to do. And he goes right there and he says that this is the pshat in the pasuk about Tzaveschem be'esahi, which is including also the chatzi shevet HaMenashe, because they were also b'chlal this tzivui. They were b'chlal the tzivui even if they weren't b'chlal the tonight anymore.